Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the MyFootballWriter podcast. Whether you are listening to us on Spotify or watching us on YouTube, excuse my croaky voice. I am recovering from a cold. Call it man flu, call it cold, call it whatever you like. I've been ill. But two people who haven't been ill, I don't think, are Matthew Saunders and Henry Miller here tonight, or this morning, or this afternoon, whenever you are listening, watching. It's been a busy couple of weeks or so with Norwich City, a new goalkeeper, a new kit, and potentially a new Danish wonder kit. Oh, we will have to wait and see. But before we delve into all of that, Matthew, Henry, how the devil are you both?
I'm not doing too bad. A bit like your cold. I've been recovering from an operation the past 2 weeks, hence why I haven't been on the pod for the past few weeks. Plus some other events, Lincoln Park in London, had to be done. But yeah, I've been doing all right. I'm doing well.
Yeah, I'm also doing really well. Had a good few weeks, helped out with BBC Radio Norfolk at the Royal Norfolk Show. It was the first time I've been in well over a decade, so that was really nice. Meeting some of the fans and obviously working hard with the team. We did 2 live scrimmages as well, so that was really nice. And of course, in the last couple of days, just seeing footage of the Oasis gigs. I cannot wait until the 3rd of August at Wembley when I actually get to see them. So yeah, been really good.
They were surprisingly good, weren't they?
They weren't surprisingly good. No, they were the bee's knees. We'll say that.
Well, when we start the MFW Oasis podcast, we can discuss that further. But yes, 3rd of August. Yeah, you are a lucky sausage. But something for us to get excited about before the 3rd of August is our brand new kit that got announced. Here it is. I'm going to flash it up on the screen. If you can't see it because you're listening, just imagine a yellow and green kit. Yeah, I mean it's 90s inspired. It's inspired by I think it was the 95, 96, 97. I think that was back in the 90s where we tended to have kits over 2 different seasons because that's how we rolled in the 90s. I actually posted a picture on our group chat of me as a toddler weighing about 10 stone, wearing the original kit that it was inspired by. Before it was even announced. And Freddie, bless him, even said that the club should definitely redo this kit because it's a banger. And so they listened to him subliminally. I don't know how. But yeah, we've got a collar. As you can see by the new background on the podcast, we have it on the sides as well. Do you have any interesting thoughts on this yellow and green kit other than it's yellow and green?
I really like this. I think this is one of my favorite kits, probably since the 1921 that had the sort of fade into green, which is controversial, surprisingly, because I thought that was a really nice kit as well. But I really like this. I think it's very sleek. I think it's very fashionable for being a yellow and green kit. I really like the collars as well. It gives off that really nice sort of retro vibe, which if you'd have asked me before the kit was released, I probably would have gone, I don't really understand it, and I probably wouldn't like it. But after seeing that, I'm a big fan, to be honest.
Yeah, I think the collar does add a little something to it. Every football kit is made nicer with a collar, and yeah, especially one with that pattern. I think it looks really nice.
I was saying this earlier. I think it's one that if I need to see it in person before I can make kind of final judgments on it. But every time I'm seeing kind of new pictures that are coming out of different players wearing it, I think it definitely grows on you. I think kind of initially it was quite kind of garish. Obviously, read into the Jake Humphrey video, however you like. He was being a bit self-deprecating, which I guess we all kind of find quite funny. But no, I mean it's smart. And I think what I will definitely say is that it was an improvement on last season's, which I will comfortably put as one of my least favourite kits. I just think it was quite boring. If there are fans of last season's kits, put them in the comments. Tell us how much you liked the 24-25 kit. But alas, it is not our kit any longer.
That being said, though, it's literally exactly the same kit as last season, just with a collar and a few bits around the sleeve. Other than that, it's exactly the same kit.
It doesn't have the faint racing stripes, which was on the last kit for some reason. I wasn't a fan, didn't like it. Since we last had a proper podcast, we were speculating about whether we would sign a goalkeeper, and our dear friend Will Grant, of course, said that he wasn't keen on signing a goalkeeper from continental Europe, and he would have much rather have preferred someone with experience in English football. So, hate to break it to you, Will, but we went and signed, what's his name? Vladan Kovacevic. Vladan Kovacevic.
Vladan, yeah.
From Sporting Lisbon, or Sporting Club. We shouldn't call them Sporting Lisbon because they won't like that. Our last signing from Sporting was a massive success. But I'm sure this one will be absolutely fine. Another guy with a really long, impronounceable name. I'm sure Norfolk will love that. I think the rhetoric around this goalkeeper signing has been a lot of kind of his highlight reels showing a lot of very sort of glaring errors, and a lot of his kind of performances over the last season being quite uninspired. Do you kind of read into sort of that negativity, or do you see this as perhaps a bargain signing for what is around £2 or £3 million for a player that was very highly regarded and obviously touted by a top European club in Sporting? Do you see this as a bargain, or do you see this as signing a player already on the decline?
It's so difficult to say because this is a player who 99% of Norwich's fan base wouldn't have heard of before. I definitely didn't. But I've sort of been reading up about him. He came to Sporting, was extremely highly rated by fans, critics alike, and just hasn't lived up to expectations there. But then, the big obvious question is, how is that going to translate from the top league in Portugal to the Championship? And it's, we can sit here, in my eyes anyway, we can sit here and predict and go, oh, well, this is going to be this or that. But no one genuinely knows. And I suppose you could say that about any signing that any club makes. But I feel like a goalkeeper is one of the most difficult sort of positions to come into, especially in the Championship, because it's a very unique style of play and very unique players that you wouldn't find most other leagues in the world. And so, as sort of bare bones as my answer is we genuinely don't know, and we genuinely won't know until that first game of the season against Millwall.
Yeah, I agree with Matthew, really. Norwich fans just have to wait and see as to how good this keeper actually is when it comes to translating what he's done in the Polish leagues and what he's done in the Portuguese leagues into the Championship. Because, yes, he's at Sporting, one of the biggest three teams in Portugal, a Champions League side. Probably didn't live up to his expectations, but what he did in Poland for both Rakov and for Legia Warsaw, I think, were quite good and built up his reputation again. So to come to Norwich, which, is probably a better standard of football than the Polish league, is going to be a test for him. But as I said it on the scrimmage last week. I said it on the last MyFootballWriter podcast. This is the biggest signing we make this season. Even if Borja Sainz leaves, which I think he will, and if Josh Sargent leaves, which he might do, this is still the biggest signing because I really like Ante Cianat, and I'm sure we'll get onto Kvistgaarden later, but he seems like he's coming with a really high pedigree. And if both of them pay off, then hopefully we can still score the goals we were scoring last season. Yes, we've made improvements to defence, but all three goalkeepers who we had last season were under par, and I do include Angus Gunn in that. Kovacevic needs to perform, and he needs to perform quickly. And then hopefully Norwich could have a chance of getting back into that top six. That's why I still think that having a solid goalkeeper is massively important for Norwich. And like we said on the last podcast, we're known for it. Norwich are known historically for having good wingers and good goalkeepers. So hopefully the club would have done their due diligence and would have signed a good goalkeeper here. What I will say, I don't think he'll be average. I think he'll either be really good and we'll be thinking, right, we've got a bargain here, or he'll flop and we'll maybe have to panic and sign someone else in January. But yeah, I think basically what I'm trying to say in short is just wait and see, really.
Yeah, I think ultimately, as long as he is an improvement in performances from Angus Gunn last season, then, the amount of goals that we concede will, drastically reduce. Obviously,
What I will say on that as well is Angus Gunn last season was very poor, and if it wasn't for George Long putting in some questionable performances, we'll say, then I think a lot of fans would have criticised Angus Gunn more. With a better defence in front of him, the likes of Medic, hopefully, and Harry Darling, would you have kept Angus Gunn then and say, look, we're going for a defensive revamp. We know the potential you've had. Yes, you've had an off season, but we know how you can perform in the Championship. Give us another year, 2 years or so. Would you have done that than rather have to gamble and have to try and sign another goalkeeper who's either at his level or above?
Matty, I'll let you take the reins on this one to start with.
I don't know, because I genuinely don't know, because I do agree, but then at the time where Garden, Garden's contract's running out, one, we didn't know who the manager was going to be, whether it's going to be more offensive, whether it's going to be more defensive, and with Liam Manning, it's sort of not a hybrid, but he does seem to be wanting to get our defence sorted out first. And then as well, at that time, it would have been, well, okay, what defenders do we sign? Because, who's going to be out there at that time? Who's going to be available on frees or on the cheap? Playing into the Angus Gunn, whether we keep him, there's so many what ifs about it that personally I can't see the sort of benefit of keeping him. Obviously, in hindsight, you might go, oh, well, yeah, we could have kept him. But at the time where that was a really relevant conversation, I don't see the value of keeping him. Even though he has played very well before, but, that was a season, 2 seasons ago. This is the now where he's had an off season. He might be on the start of a decline, hopefully not for his sake, but you never know with football. I would rather have offloaded him at the time and then take that gamble rather than sit here in hindsight with Gunn and go, well, hopefully he has a good season. But I do understand where you're coming from with that question.
I think everyone's heart would say keep Gunny and pray that it was merely the defence. There will obviously be games next season where Cordova and Duffy will play together. I have no doubt about that. I think we'd all love to have, at least the centre-back partnership of Medic and Darling. Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a goalkeeper who had a 1-season drop-off. We could say exactly the same thing about Kovacevic. with his loan at Legia Warsaw, where by all accounts, from what I've heard, a lot of their fans weren't really that pleased with him. I think he got one man of the match performance against Chelsea in the Conference League in a match that didn't really count. But I also don't think that he was their first choice. That's obviously a side point. In terms of Gunny, yeah, he probably would have wanted to stay, but again, question mark of money. We've got money. Going to go on to prove why we probably do have money. But he probably was one of our highest earners as a Premier League signing. Probably, for his performances, the salary that he was demanding probably wasn't in line with that. If he was offered a lower deal, we don't know if he's rejected that. Maybe there was already a plan for him to move off and progress his career somewhere else. Again, Angus, if you would like to come on the podcast and talk to us exclusively about your contract situation, we would welcome you. Just DM me. You know who I am on Twitter. I know that. On the subject of money and on the subject of footballers who are really difficult to pronounce, I mean, Canary Call, get ready for this. If you can't wrap your head around Kovacevic, get your head around Matthias Kvistgaarden. Now, I'm going to anglicize this to the point that it's butchered. And the club, when it is potentially announced, will probably come out and say that it's Kvistgaarden or something very Danish like that. I'm going to kick it off by saying Kvistgaarden. And when we look back on this podcast after he's won the Ballon d'Or in 5 years' time, we'll look back on this and think, oh, you silly little Norwich fans, you couldn't even pronounce his name. We are, of course, dreaming, wax lyrical, about a player who I would say approximately 72 hours ago, none of us have heard of, apart from a few niche Danish football watchers. But yes, there was weird news breaking, especially on Friday, where Norwich City had beaten the likes of Celtic and Lens to the 23-year-old Dane's signature. He's completely prolific in the Danish leagues. It could be a deal in the region of 11 or 12 million pounds, which would it be a record signing for Norwich?
Yes.
I think so. I think it would probably go over Rashica or Zolis. Zolis was 9 million. So yes, it could be
was 9 million as well.
Ah, yes. So even a record signing at championship level. So this is obviously, a really kind of emerging story that, has gained speed rapidly. But all of a sudden, it looks like it might all of a sudden happen. It obviously hasn't, and it could fall through at any moment. What do we think about this kind of potential signing? Do we think that if he's at least sort of, vaguely successful, I would say sort of 15 goals plus, is his benchmark. Would you say that this could go down as one of Ben Knapper's best signings of his tenure so far?
Oh, difficult. I mean, I feel like we were saying the same last year about Oscar Schwartau when we signed him under Johannes Hoftorp, and we were saying, wow, we've got an 18-year-old Danish wonder kid. This guy could be the next big thing. And then over the course of the season, he barely got played. So I'm taking this one with a lot of precaution. But I will say Kvistgaarden does seem like a much better player than Schwartau is right now. Maybe Schwartau will play a lot more this season and tell me to shut up because I'm wrong and stupid. Maybe that's the case, and if so, I'm hoping so. But as precautionary as I am being, I can see why a lot of people are getting excited about this because still a young sort of Danish attacker that does look to be replacing someone in the offense, most likely Borja Sainz. But this is another exciting prospect, and we know how Sainz started out in his first season here, where he came in, was okay, but nothing special, and then started this past season off amazingly, So maybe he'll be another Borja Sainz, maybe he'll be better than Borja Sainz, who knows? But I am sort of heaving on the side of a caution for now. But, if he comes in, he plays regularly, and he's playing really well, then I'll look like a bit of a twit, won't I? But it's definitely a lot of reasons to get excited about him. Definitely.
So you're telling me we're linked with a Scandinavian attacker from Brøndby who's prolific for Brøndby with ties to Glasgow and who's going to come to Norwich. That sounds really familiar. And we all know how the last one turned out. So if he can do anything like what Teemu Pukki did in a Norwich City shirt, then we'll love him forever and he will etch his name into the history of this football club. But look, this is what I was probably should have said about Vladan Kovacevic as well. These edits that we've seen and like glorifying keepers' mistakes, it's so easy to do that about anyone. You look at someone like Trent Alexander-Arnold, probably the most polarizing footballer in the England team at the minute. You could get Liverpool fans making compilations of him and he'll look Sunday League level. And then you could also get Liverpool fans making compilations of him and he looks like the best right back the world's ever seen. So you can't take for granted everything you see on social media when it comes to these compilations. And 9 times out of 10, they are amplified to fit the agenda that you hold on that person or that team. So it's the same with Kvistgaarden. It's the same with Kovacevic. What doesn't lie is their stats, though. And yes, Kovacevic was signed for big money by Sporting and didn't really live up to the hype. And Kvistgaarden is doing prolific stuff for Brøndby. So hopefully he can come here and just replicate that and score those goals. It'll be interesting, though, as Matthew said, whether he comes in and is seen as the Sainz replacement or whether he's seen as the Sargent replacement. We do understand that there has been significant interest in Borja Sainz ramping up. But, of course, there's interest in Josh Sargent as well. So, yeah, it'll be interesting to see where he plays, whether he will come in off the flank like what Borja Sainz does or whether he will be that striker.
Yeah, and I think that's ultimately, a huge positive that he is flexible in both positions, can be played out wide, can play up front. Obviously, what that lends itself to is a formation that's quite flexible mid-game. He could start out wide and then we could, switch to a 3-back, 5-back and a 2-man up top. So I think, that's ultimately, a real plus for Manning tactically. But yeah, I mean, seeing, the highlight reels and seeing the amount of goals that he has scored, and ultimately just that it is the names that he has been linked to, and he would much rather play an East Anglian derby than an Old Firm, which, I love that for him. I would too. What I also think is we massively need to up our chants game because we don't really have any decent chants for these new players. So I was trying to think of songs that have guarded in them, and I came across Octopus's Garden by the Beatles, which is in Abbey Road, the Abbey Road album, which is the most iconic album ever recorded. If you've never heard of it, children, go away and listen to it. But what it something along the lines of, I want to be top of the league with Matthias Kvistgaarden on the way. He's down the wing. The Barclay sings with Matthias Kvistgaarden on the way. Yeah. I've got another one. A new goalkeeper, and his name's Kovacevic. He came in the summer with Darling and Medic. He's number 1, and he's giving me a fetish. Hey, Kovacevic.
Perfect.
Yeah,
Both of those need to be sang out in the E block and the Barclay next season. Both of those are absolutely gold.
Yeah. He's taller than you. He's taller than you. Yakov Medic. He's taller than you, probably. If you're shorter than 6'3", maybe not that one. I'm working on these. It's a long summer. Give me time. But my final word on Mateusz Kvistgaarden. I'm excited, and I hope it does get announced. Otherwise, I'm going to have a field day on Twitter. I'm going to have a field day. Oh, it'll be like Christmas all over again. But as Henry alluded to earlier, Borja Sainz' exit from Norwich City. I know everyone hold back the tears. He's indeed ramping up as well as Porto, I believe to be the team leading the race, although Nottingham Forest also are continuously linked. Athletic Bilbao have managed to retain Nico Williams, so aren't in the market for a winger. Is this one that... Are you both with me in the fact that you just kind of want this to be wrapped up and for us to just try and get the best deal possible? He's got 12 months left on his contract. He's, obviously declined in form since the autumn. Do you think just grab a deal for him and let him go on his European journey? Or do you see a magical happy land where we can perhaps keep him alongside Josh Sargent and Kvistgaarden and Cernats and absolutely romp the league?
Yeah, no, I think I agree with you. And you sort of alluded to his form dropping off in autumn, and that's a really big sort of thing for me because, yes, he was world class at the start of the season, but then after that autumn and after those bans, he dropped off so much, and it felt like every game that I watched, whether that be on the TV or live, it never felt like he had any real control over the game. And I kind of get it because teams obviously adjust. And I do think playing out on the left did hinder him a bit because I think he is a very creative player. And I reckon he could have done a lot more if he was playing as like a central attacking midfielder. But at the same time, his form dropped off so much. And I think mentally, some of the things he was doing, I feel like he got a bit greedy at times as well during a lot of matches. And instead of trying to play that pass or make that run down the wing to cross into the box or whatever, he just sort of stopped at the halfway line, stopped any chance for counter-attack, and caused a lot more problems than he solved after that autumn. So honestly, I do think it's time to just get the best deal done and sell him, replace him with Kvistgaarden, and see how he get on next season.
Yeah, I completely agree. What shocks me is the fact that we've got to this stage and he's still a Norwich City player as we currently speak. I thought one of the first things the club would do would be try and cash in for Borja Sainz. And yes, not accept the first offer that comes in, but negotiate and have that at the top of their priority lists for the transfer business they do this summer. Look, there's no two ways about it. He was the best player in the league up until November. And then, don't get me wrong, the suspensions that he accumulated didn't help himself, but he did, his form did plummet. There's no other way of putting that. His form did plummet. So to cash in on him now when he's got 12 months left on his deal, when Sargent's the one who is taking all the headlines, I think it would be a deal, just a really good deal, just to cash in on him. And like I always said, you could argue whether we've actually replaced Buendia or not, but the fact of the matter is Norwich have always had good either attacking midfielders or wingers. What Borja Sainz fits into. If it's not Houlihan, then it's Pritchard or Maddison or Rowe or Sarah or Borja Sainz or Emi Buendia. You can literally list them. Ever since I've been a Norwich fan, we've had good wingers or good attacking midfielders. So even if we do sell Sainz, there will be another who comes in who blows us away. So for me, one of the first things I would have done would be not to sell him instantly. And we know Norwich haven't done that. They've rejected offers from both Porto and from Napoli. That was revealed a couple of weeks ago. But if Porto are closer to the valuation, then yes, I think we should accept that, and we should try and get him out of the door. I think what I'm interested in is if there's been any progression with Lewis Dobbin. We know when the club released their retained list, they said they were working on a deal to bring Dobbin back to Carrow Road on a season-long loan. And then since then, we've not heard anything, because also in the statement, they said they're working on a deal to bring Jacob Wright back to Carrow Road. And that was obviously announced within the space of a week. So, yeah, it's interesting to see what's happening there. I thought Dobbin actually played quite well when he was here, and he was unfortunate to get that injury when he did. So seeing him at Norwich for a season could maybe be a good thing. I'm not saying he's as good as Sainz, but obviously we can get a player back there and not really spend any money on him, just wages, and then also have the money from Sainz. The one that we should be maybe trying to keep hold of more is Josh Sargent. And if we get an offer that blows us out of the window, Norwich are going to sell it, because that is very Norwich. Even under the Atanasios, I reckon if there's an offer that comes in for Sargent that they deem too good to turn down, then they won't turn it down. But now, hopefully, with more money, we can flex our muscles a bit and try to keep Josh Sargent. But yeah, that's wishful thinking from me. But no, I think on the whole, having Sainz leaves probably does make sense.
Yeah, just to pick up on the Dobbin point, I don't even know if he's back from injury fully yet, and I presume that may impact a deal. If he's got to do a medical, he's probably not going to pass that medical. Yeah, it doesn't feel like he would kind of go back to Villa and really kind of push on. Villa didn't sign Marcus Rashford, so maybe they're making room for him. Who knows? He's a player who I think every time that he played for Norwich last campaign, he did really well. And I think obviously his injury then coincided with really bad form. I'm not saying he was the key, but I'm sure he would have had a bit more of an impact. Go on.
What I will say, now that we're on the terms of signings as well, obviously it's been a very busy window for Norwich City, but it's also been a very busy window for Norwich City women's side, because, of course, a few months back, they announced that they'd be paying some of their players going forward, and they've started to roll out the paid contracts. So in terms of the players that were here before, you've got the likes of Kerry Fly and Holly Kennard and Ellie Bishop, who now have picked up the professional contracts, and they've also signed Eloise Hall and Eloise King, and let Eloise Moran go. So, it's a tale of three Eloises, one out of the door, two in the door. And one of the Eloises who's come in, we've signed from #United last season. She only joined # in February, but has decided to come to Norwich. I think it's on a free transfer, but she made over 100 appearances for that team, who we're not going to mention, and was born in Bury St Edmunds. So that'll be interesting to see how she can adapt to life in Norfolk. But no, I feel it's important when we're on the topic of signings to mention that the women's side are really going about their business well, it seems, and have been rolling out those professional contracts.
And I'm sure before the season starts, we will have a full women's season review, because obviously last season, again, sort of a second successive season of disappointment for them. So again, like the men's team, fingers crossed for immense success, but keep an eye out on the MFW channels for more content later in the summer. talking of more signings, one that kind of rumbled on sort of yesterday evening was Pelle Matson. Again, sorry, Canary Call. I might have completely butchered this name as well, but another player from the Danish league. If only we had a really talented Danish manager who would be really, well suited to these players. It's almost like Ben Knapper had a note from last season, signings for Johannes, and then found it again at the bottom of his folder and was like, "Oh, Liam, do you want this?" I think he's 23 or 24. I don't know. He feels old. He feels young, not old. He feels a good age. I don't know what I'm saying. But crucially, my point is that he's a central midfielder and crucially a central defensive midfielder. Now, if we have Jacob Wright, who should theoretically start every match because he's fantastic, Kenny McLean, who should also start every match because he's, been fantastic and pretty consistent for us over the years. We then have Pelle Matson potentially in the mix, who was linked to Portsmouth, but all of a sudden is not being linked to Portsmouth, is all of a sudden being linked to us. You then add Slimani, you then add Forson into the mix. Do we all of a sudden, and Nunez, can't forget Nunez. I'm not going to list every central midfielder we have, but you get the point that I'm making. Do we need another centre mid? Or do you think we're already quite kind of stacked in that department?
Honestly, this transfer feels like it's preparing for another season where we're hit by injuries heavy. Sorry, because last season that is somewhere where we struggled with when we got a lot of injuries in the midfield. We had to have, Slimani playing as your attacking player, and we all saw he's not great there, to put it gently. But this is one of those signings where it's like, okay, let's get a lot of backups just in case we get a lot of injuries, and then we can rotate how we need to, because I think we've already got that attacking prowess that we can put into midfield with Forson, Nunez, Schwartau, even the likes of Jacob Wright, who showed good attacking signs last year when he was sort of, his role changed from defensive to more playmaking and passing of the ball, which we were all a fan of. So it just feels like that. And as well, it sort of goes into this defensive revamp because it's most likely we're going to be playing three at the back anyway under Manning. Hence why we signed so many centre-backs this window. And it feels like it's going to be very sort the defence out now, and then attack will leave or we'll make adjustments to as and when we needed. So I feel as though this is just another sign into not only bolster our options off the bench and in case we get hit by injuries, just another one to bolster our defensive capabilities, really.
Yeah, I think it's difficult because Matty's right. We were left short probably in that area last season, and signing more players is only going to be a good thing because you said it there, Jack, about the defence. There will be times where Cordova and Duffy probably do play together this coming season, just down to injuries. Injuries will happen for every team. So to have players come in knowing their roles and knowing that you're going to get a good performance out of them is a good thing. But we've still got a hell of a lot of players in that position. Even someone we haven't mentioned, someone like Liam Gibbs, if he sees this player come through the door, this Matson come through the door, he's not then going to be content with being a rotation player. And that's what you have to think about the morale of the team as well. The more midfielders you come through, that come through the door, the more midfielders you have that are already here that are going to potentially angle for a move away. And then rather than bolstering your ranks in midfield, it would then get to a stage where you're signing like one in or one out, or two in or two out, which in terms of squad depth doesn't really help the team. So no, for me, I think any signing is good, I'd say, but we hope that any signing is good. And this Matson, again, he's playing in the Danish league. It's a league that Ben Knapper seems to know relatively well. So hopefully he can be a good player. But yeah, it's difficult as we seem to have so many players in that position anyway, and so many who want to prove themselves as well, like Liam Gibbs, like Amankra Forson, like Oscar Schwartau. So yeah, it'll be really interesting to see how Liam Manning is able to manage that.
I've always loved Denmark. That's what I'm going to say. But I mean, also, there's technically a gap in the midfield from a Dane leaving. So if this Pelle Matson can play at left back as well and sort of half decently at centre back, then good on him. Feel free to take the number 19 shirt. But clearly we're not going to re-sign Lungi, and clearly he has no interest in playing in Norfolk or Suffolk. But that's enough about that subject matter. Just one sort of final point before we get onto the ridiculous nonsense that is quickfire hot takes. We've obviously kind of spoken about lots of incomings, and that's great. We were just sort of speaking before the podcast that as it stands, we have not technically sold anyone. We're obviously not really counting Jonathan Rowe, the hero from the England under-21 Euros. Good on him. Wish him all the best at Marseille. In terms of player sales, there's obviously a few names that we, again, think will definitely leave, and will definitely leave for big money. There's definitely players who we would like to leave for any form of money, and there are even some players who we would kind of deem as quite important to the project, and would be kind of priceless. Which player would you say in this kind of current squad is the least replaceable in this current market for Norwich City?
Ooh, I think for me, it's going to be really tough, because I think the obvious one that you want to say is Josh Sargent, which I completely understand because he is phenomenal at a championship level. But we do have Ante Sinats here, who, yes, isn't a Josh Sargent, but for me personally, I can definitely see that potential of him becoming just as good as Josh Sargent and just as consistent. And we saw glimpses of it last year, I think, in different types of games, even though he's been played on that right wing, much like Sargent was when he first came in alongside Pukki, and he wasn't the greatest there. He adapted fairly quickly, and whenever he was played as a striker, he did look quite good. But sort of to go back to your original question, Jack, for me personally, and this might be sort of a weird one, I'm going to say Kellen Fisher, because I feel like there's a lot of experience from him at such a young age as well. And, we signed him from Bromley when they were in the National League. It's good, and it'll be difficult to replace him at any level, I think. And, if we sign a player from, the Championship to replace him, I struggle to find where there would be much more positives in whoever we might sign from the Championship than we will with Fisher, because he's, in my opinion, he's such a good player. He's such a well defensive player. He has the technical ability, to play in midfield. Maybe not the full understanding yet, but he's a right back, and we only sort of put him in midfield because we had to. The only real criticism I have of Fisher is that his attacking prowess isn't as good as maybe like a Jack Stacey, but defensively, I would argue he's one of the best in the league. And I feel like if he was to go at any real point, we'd struggle to replace him or get a good replacement, especially for someone as young as Fisher, who is that good. I think it'd be near enough impossible unless we sign another wonder kid from somewhere and they pay off.
Yeah, for me, there was a lot of talks about having sellable assets. I know last summer a lot of Norwich fans were saying that we had 4 or 5 sellable assets, and 2 of them obviously left in Sarah and Rowe. Well, this summer there's been a lot of chat saying that we have 3 sellable assets in the form of Sainz, Sargent, and Marcelino Nunez. And yes, I think 2 will go. Sargent probably is more likely to go than stay, I'd say. But the club wouldn't shoot themselves in the foot and get rid of all 3. So I think from that perspective, Marcelino Nunez, they obviously know how valuable he can be. And I think he will stay at the football club because of their transfer dealings that they're probably going to do with both Borja Sainz and Josh Sargent. I think on his day, Norwich fans know how good Marcelino Nunez can be and the value he adds to that Norwich City midfield. But the trouble is he can sometimes get lost in the shuffle if Norwich are having a downward spell in form. But when the team are firing on all cylinders, Marcelino Nunez is such a big help, and the club certainly see his worth, and keeping him at the club again is a huge statement from Norwich City. But in terms of those positions that are sort of really, really dependable. Again, Matthew hit it on the head, and that's also why I like that the club have given Jack Stacey a new deal, because the fact that we've got solid players in all sorts of positions shows how good and how seriously this season is being taken internally. To have both Kellen Fisher and Jack Stacey as our right backs is a statement of intent, in my opinion. To bring in Harry Darling is a statement of intent. So yeah, all of these are key, but especially if Sargent goes as well, it will be a huge statement if we can keep Marcelino Nunez and we can keep him fit as well, because then hopefully he can provide the goods on the pitch.
But what we definitely need to do is sign someone that speaks Spanish. No Onel, soon to be no Borja. Marcelino is going to be all on his own. So I don't know whether we can sign Jude Bellingham. I'm sure he speaks Spanish now. Who knows? But I suppose I ought to answer my own question before we get on to the short questions. I probably think that it depends on how much money we get for Sargent. There have been rumours to say that we would accept something in the region of £16 million, which makes me feel very nervous, because that's definitely within the budget of a lower Premier League club. I mean, Sunderland have already spent something ridiculous like £60 million this summer. So yeah, I mean, if we could get him if we could sell Sargent for over 20 to 25, maybe 30, then, there's definitely players that we could replace him for, half that figure and still break our transfer record. I'd probably lean with Henry. I'd probably say Nunez is probably the least replaceable. Chilean international, good with set pieces. But problem is, he's a bit like Borja. But when he's in the mood, he's on fire. When he's off the boil, he's completely off the boil. I think he's a very hit and miss. And I think if Manning can really string a tune out of him, then I think, he could, really be a pivotal player.
And I think as well, with in terms of like concrete links, I don't think any link to like Borja Sainz or Josh Sargent is one that should be taken lightly. You look at Burnley. There's been a lot of discourse when Burnley were announced to be linked with Josh Sargent of, surely he wouldn't go there. But they've just signed Kyle Walker. So, stranger things have happened.
Yeah, that is proper Football Manager 10 seasons in type of stuff. Yeah, I mean, we're already seeing it with Aaron Ramsey and Jack Wilshere managing in the Championship. We are no longer living in the real world. We are living in a Football Manager simulation. So we've neared the end of today's podcast, but just to leave you with some usual quickfire hot takes. I did write these on the fly just before the podcast because I forgot. But they're here and they exist. So 5 for you. Let's start off with, what is the most difficult Norwich City player name to pronounce?
Is this like ever? Oh, of all time. Oh, you got to go back for this one. On the quick, I'd probably say I always, especially when I was younger, I always struggled with Mbakani.
Yeah,
just
fair.
Personally.
Henry, you probably have lots of people calling in.
Yeah,
terrible butcherings of names.
I mean, in terms of like phonetically, probably someone like Sidney Van Hooijdonk. Like, because how would you spell that? I think he has a random I or a J in there at some point as well. So in terms of like writing names out as well, like subjectively, probably the hardest in recent years has been someone like Sidney Van Hooijdonk.
Yeah, could you imagine a Norwich City spelling bee where it's like, question 1, Vardis Adija Afoe. Question 2, Christoph Zimmerman. How many N's and how many M's and how many? Oh, yeah. I'm going to go Vardis Adija Afoe. I still can't even say it.
What I remember about Adija Afoe is that there was one time where I was listening to the scrimmage. It was around like his season, so like that 2015-16 Premier League season, and someone rang in and told Chris Gorham whenever he pronounced the name Vardis Adija, they thought he was saying God is a DJ. So whenever someone mentions Vardis Adija to me now, that's all I can think about.
Yeah, well, now it's stuck in my brain. Right, next quickfire hot take. Who is Norwich City's most iconic shirt sponsor, in your opinion?
Ooh. I mean, for me, in my lifetime, it would have been Aviva.
Yeah, fair.
Yeah, it is either Aviva or Norwich and Peterborough. It depends what generation. If you're of that generation to see us play European football, it probably would be Norwich and Peterborough. But as Matty said, for our generation, it is Aviva. That's the sponsor we had in League One. It's also a sponsor we had in the Premier League for many seasons, and the sponsor we had at Wembley when we got promoted there. So yeah, for me, it is Aviva. And I saw your edit you did with the new kit, but with the old sponsors, and the Aviva sponsor on this kit does hit differently.
Oh yeah. I like that one because I did experiment with a number of different ones. I wasn't too keen on the Lotus one, but people seem to like the new kit with the Lotus badge on it. I went for the traditional Lotus, not the Dean Smith Lotus. Iconic sponsor, I just have to go for Coleman's. Cole. Yeah, I got this off the Pony website. They're still 45 quid. Get them while they're hot. I'm not sponsored by Pony, but Coleman's, iconic, from Norwich. Not made in Norwich anymore. Annoying. Let's not get into the politics of mustard, shall we? Who is the most iconic mascot?
Captain Canary for me.
Oh, I was going to say no Captain Canary.
Oh,
I mean,
well,
any other answer than Captain Canary is wrong, because I believe he's the only one at the minute. So he's outlived all of the other ones. So yeah, it is Captain Canary, whether you like it or not, my friend.
Okay. Who would be your favorite niche mascot that's not Captain Canary?
Probably the Aviva Lima.
The Aviva Lima, yeah. Does Matthew remember any others? I seem to remember the Norwich and Peterborough cat the blue and yellow one.
I
you not
very
remember him?
faintly remember the Aviva Lima, so I'm gonna have to say that, but that is extremely faint.
Okay,
There was also Splat the Cat as well, wasn't there?
possibly. Maybe that's the one I'm thinking of. I can't remember. What is the weirdest thing you've seen a fan do or heard a fan say at Carrow Road?
At Carrow Road. Oh, weirdest thing I've seen probably would have been the last game I went to at Carrow Road, which was the West Brom, and I went with my dad, and there was a guy next to us, and if he's watching the podcast, I want to say this was amazing, and I respect you massively. But he had, if I remember correctly, it was like a green, like spiky mohawk, and it was just so noticeable and so brilliant, and I just can't get that out of my head. So if that's him watching, fair play. Love the hairstyle.
It's a difficult question because in terms of stuff I've seen at Carrow Road, one of the most iconic, the fan who went viral, I believe he has actually passed away now, so God rest his soul, but the Weber out, Delia out man.
Oh,
The guy, he looks a bit like a mad professor, but he sat near me, and he'd always shout "Delia out" like that. And there was one time where I forget who the manager was. I think it was Alex Neil, and no, it was Neil Adams. That was it. In my first season when I had a season ticket, I think we played Reading at Carrow Road and we lost, and that was us like 11th in the league. So for that season, I think it was the lowest we dropped, and the river end was silent, I guess, as per. But during the game, towards the end, when the crowd were fed up, you could just hear his voice just shout Adams out, just repeatedly. And then one of the times it would be like 10 minutes between each. So he'd say it like 2 or 3 times, then stop, then 10 minutes later say it again. But on the fourth and final time he did it, he changed it up a bit. So he said Adams out and then Pulis in. But he didn't say Pulis. He said Pulis like that. So, yeah, in terms of that was really iconic, just him. And then, of course, he went viral. He went viral as well when he said Weber out, Delia out, walking out of the ground. And then, yeah, I think it was last season I read in the program that he passed away, unfortunately. So, yeah, God rest his soul. He was an icon. But in terms of another topic, the most tragic thing I've seen at Carrow Road was still the halftime challenges that KSI did when we played Tottenham.
Yeah, I do actually remember.
That was the most embarrassed I've ever been at Carrow Road, I'd say, in terms of things that have happened away from the football. That was the most embarrassed I've been at Carrow Road.
Yeah. I'm going to be quite honest. The amount of times I've been to Carrow Road, most people have been fairly either quiet or thus kind of like normal. I don't think we're that peculiar during a game. I do remember now. I think obviously I understand the context of it now, but at the time I thought it was very weird. Someone was stood next to me with headphones on. Listening to Kvistgaarden whilst watching the football. Now, apparently, this is very common, and people like to do it. I mean, fair play. Kvistgaarden is a legend, but I don't know if I'm at the football, I'll just listen to the football because it's right there in front of me. But just plug your headphones in. What if you score and then you lose your headphones? I guess that was back in the day of the sort of corded ones.
You did see it all the time, but with people listening to another game, say for example, if they were potentially in danger of relegation on the final day, then you see people then listen to like other games or whatever. But yeah, to listen to your own game, despite how much of a legend Chris Gorham is. It is still a bit bizarre, but obviously there are people that do it and there are people that love it. So yeah, fair play to them.
If you
Utter
have
woke
ever
nonsense.
listened, oh god, yeah, woke
Utter
nonsense.
woke nonsense.
If you have ever listened to Chris Gorham while standing inside Carrow Road watching a football match, please do comment down below and let us know. And please do remember to subscribe to the MFW YouTube channel for fantastic content like this and much more. Our final quickfire hot take. It's a very silly, it's quite a simple one. What is your favourite opening day result for Norwich? Not any.
Now you got to make me think of opening days.
Of which there haven't been many good ones.
Yeah, exactly. Hang on, I'll pass this over to Henry while I try and remember. And by remember, I mean do a Google search.
One of mine, I wasn't actually at the game, but one of the first ones that sprung to mind was Blackburn away in the 2016-17 season. Because I think we tore them apart. I think it was like 4-0 or 4-1 or something like
4-1.
that. Yeah. And I can remember thinking, right, we never win on the opening day and we've just torn a team apart here. So yeah, we mean the business. So that was one of them. And then the other one, the Hull City game just for the last minute winner from Ida. That was good. The only thing that let that down was the weather. It was the first or second week of August and like torrential rain. I was soaked through. So yeah, I think the weather lets that one down for me, but the late goal was brilliant.
Go on, Matthew.
I think I agree with Henry with the whole game, and I think what made it best for me personally, obviously the last minute winner from Ida, but also just seeing the meltdown on Twitter from Rosenia and all the Hull fans. Oh, just beautiful.
Yeah, I think the Ida one was probably one that springs to mind. I think I weirdly liked our first result in the Prem under Lambert, the 1-1 draw away at Wigan. Even though it wasn't a huge result, it was just like we were there and we didn't lose on the opening day. And Houlihan scored a Premier League goal that felt weirdly special, and obviously it went on to fantastic things. But I specifically remember where I was for the opening day of the 12-13 season, which I believe was away at Fulham, where we lost 5-0. And I was in Edinburgh, and I was literally just watching my phone with each goal go in, sort of every 15-minute interval or so. So it's 4. Oh, that's a shame. Oh, God,
which leads me on to another good opening day game, and that was the 1-1 draw at Craven Cottage in 2017-18, because I was actually at that game. It's the only time I've been to Craven Cottage, and I can remember Fulham were by far the better side. And then when Oliveira scored and just held his shirt up to Daniel Farker, it was like, okay, like you've probably screwed yourself in terms of getting off on the worst possible start. But it's also an iconic moment and a moment that fans will probably never forget. So, yeah, just in terms of that moment and the fact that we got a draw when we probably should have lost, as we always lost to Fulham. Probably that's up there as well.
Yeah, well, it could be Millwall. Let's see. Let's hope not long now. I think just over a month. Until proper championship football returns. Obviously, we've got the friendlies coming up, and we also have lots of other exciting news coming up. Potentially some Danish wonder kids, potentially some very sad sales. But for all manner of summer Norwich City news, do keep your ears peeled to the MFW YouTube channel and the MFW podcast. Hopefully we'll be back. Hopefully we might even see Freddie. We might even see Will before the start of the season. Who knows? I know, Matthew. I'm shocked too. We might do. But this has been episode 45. If you have enjoyed it and if you stayed this long, please do like, subscribe, comment. Love us. We love you too. We will see you in the next episode very soon.